Hello, students. This week we are going to be starting your first essay, and I wanted to walk you through what we're going to be focusing on this week in week 9 so that you will feel a little more confident. So, week 9, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, you will see now that I am in the home screen for week 9. I'm going to go to content in week 9 for you, and you will see that we have our learning objectives for the week. Our learning objectives for the week include drafting an engaging introduction and clear thesis statements for an argument essay, applying the strategies from Harrop and Lamott to begin developing a first draft. Harrop, of course, is the author of your textbook, and Lamott is your secondary reading this week. To demonstrate understanding of clear, cohesive writing with correct grammar and citation, and to evaluate strong thesis statements and hook strategies. And then your last one will be to practice combining sentences and citing sources using parenthetical citation and MLA format. I have a sample student argument essay 2 here, and we'll get back to that here in just a few minutes. I'm going to go over the PowerPoint that I have with you. So hopefully, let me just stop the share and then get into the PowerPoint here. And go over what we're doing. So we are going to be looking at crafting effective introductions and thesis statements for argument essays. So to first talk about the power of a strong introduction, having a strong introduction, this is where students get stuck the most, and I talk about this a lot throughout all of my classes. Your introduction sets the tone for your entire essay. It captures the reader's attention, it provides context for your argument, and it leads smoothly into your thesis statement. Some steps to writing an effective introduction. You need to start with a hook. It gets your audience's attention, provides background on your topic, narrow it down to your specific argument, and to end with your thesis statement. That being said, there are several different ways that you can approach it, but crafting a clear thesis statement will clearly state your main position without saying things like, this essay will be about, or today I'm going to talk about, or hey, have you ever heard of this? No questions, and you want to always keep it in third person. Your thesis statement provides a roadmap for your essay, is specific and focused, and can be supported with evidence. The discussion board I had you do last week, or maybe this week, has you developing a research question / thesis statement, really looking at what you're going to be doing and what direction you're going to be heading in with your argument essay as we engage in the last 3 weeks of the course. So some steps to writing an effective argument thesis is to identify your topic and stance. You don't want to say, I'm going to be talking about. Again, it needs to be in third person. It needs to be debatable. It has to be something that can be argued. It needs to be very specific and very focused. So one of the things that I have seen in all my years of teaching this course is that some students like to waffle, and you have to pick one side or the other. You can't switch between the two. Your language needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, and it needs to be able to be supported with peer-reviewed evidence. So strong versus weak thesis statements. Strong thesis statements are specific, arguable, and supportable. Weak thesis statements are vague, obvious, or factual. So if you looked at this thesis statement, social media is popular. Notice there's a question mark there because I don't know if that's a question or if it is just a standard statement of opinion. Social media is popular does not tell me anything at all. It does not give me whether it's debatable. It gives me literally a statement of fact. Social media is popular. So I'm going to show you some examples of some strong thesis statements. And again, you can watch this as many times as you want. You don't necessarily have to listen to my voice. You can put it on mute and the closed captions if you need to. But these are some strong thesis statements. Notice the claim and the rationale is in the picture that I have here. Due to its addictive nature and negative impact on mental health, social media usage should be limited for teenagers. That's one strong thesis statement. It is debatable, it is clear, it has a claim, and it also has reasoning in it. The second one I have is the government should implement stricter regulations on fast food advertising to combat the rising obesity epidemic. Now, that is a somewhat effective thesis statement. It does not give a whole lot of information in there. So I'd say it's kind of a so-so thesis statement more than a strong one because it does not necessarily have any reasoning in it. So I think that's also extremely important. It's a solid opinion and a solid statement, but it needs just a little bit more added to it. Now, to look at some weak ones, social media has both good and bad aspects. Going back to what I said previously, that is what is known or what I tend to call a waffling thesis statement because it has both sides as represented in the thesis statement, and you have to choose a side. You have to pick a side when you are writing an argument essay. Fast food is unhealthy. Yes, it is unhealthy. However, again, statement of opinion, 0 to no information. Why is fast food unhealthy? What effects does it have on an individual's health? Does it contribute to the rising obesity epidemic? That's another way you could add to it. This essay will discuss climate change. Again, perfectly normal problem that students often encounter with their writing is sometimes they say things like this essay will discuss. Can't be doing that. These are weak because they don't give enough information. So then you want to revise it. You want to add some specificity. You want to make it arguable. You want to ensure that it can be supported with some evidence. You want to avoid vague language. So how would you revise the statement, pollution is bad for the environment? Well, one of the things that I would say is I would add some specificity. Why is pollution bad for the environment? Now, of course, you were given a list of topics to discuss, so you will have all of those different topics that you can choose from. And if there's something else you want to write about, just make sure that you reach out to me so that we can discuss it because it really does need to relate to the readings that you have been doing this semester. So pollution is bad for the environment. How would you fix that? What would you add? What kinds of things would you add? Why is pollution bad? Is pollution bad because it destroys air quality? Is pollution bad because it destroys the beautiful earth that we have? Is pollution bad because it hurts the animals? I mean, it needs to have some specificity to it. So you need to have at least 3 supporting statements as to what you're going to cover as to why pollution is bad for the environment. That being said, going into the next one, I'm going to talk a little bit about academic style, the importance of avoiding personal pronouns. When you are using personal pronouns in academic writing, it actually weakens your position. So you need to make sure that you maintain objectivity in academic writing. You need to focus on the evidence and arguments rather than personal opinion. Yes, you are writing an argument, and yes, it is your personal opinion, but you have to keep yourself out of it. I'm quite known for saying to my students in my in-person classes, it does not mean I don't like you. It does not mean I don't care about you, but nobody cares what you think. You can't say, I think this is. You need to take out those 2 words and get out of that habit. If you are avoiding personal pronouns as well and you're maintaining that objectivity, then you're enhancing your credibility and your professionalism as an academic writer. So you can say something like, it is evident that, instead of I think that. It is evidence that pollution is bad for the environment because it destroys natural phenomenons occurring in the environment. You can say that pollution is bad for the environment or society because it destroys air quality. It needs to have some specificity, not just because you think it's bad. There has to be scientific evidence or evidence to back it up. Okay, that being said, alternatives to personal pronouns, you want to use passive voice judiciously. That means, obviously, you don't want to use it very often. Early on in the course, we did a lesson on active and passive voice, and it's critically important that you make sure that your essay is written in active voice rather than passive voice. You want to refer to your research. You need to pull a source from the library. That was last week's lesson. This essay argues a little bit on the lower level side, but it is something certainly that could be assistance for you. Use third-person perspective. Researchers have found you can employ personal constructions. You can say, it is clear that, something like that, to help you. That being said, going into MLA 9 parenthetical citations, the basics, you want to include the author's last name and page number. In your parenthetical citation, we did some grammar practice on that a couple of weeks ago. There cannot be a comma between the name and the page number. Your period always comes after the parentheses. And so I've given you an example here, Smith 23. And so you can see here you have a citation. It is double spaced. It's a hanging indent for the second line. Your author's name is David Seed. The title is The Fiction of Joseph Heller, Against the Grain. It was published by St. Martin's Press in 1989. There are special cases with MLA citations. If you have multiple authors, two authors, you would use both last names, Smith and Jones, page 45. If you have three or more authors, this is typical in medical texts. It would be Smith et al. Et al. Is literally just Latin for and more or and others. No author, you're going to use a shortened title in quotation marks, and you would use the author title and the page number. Oftentimes, this comes when you use popular sources, but because this essay is academic, you won't be using popular sources. So just make sure that you're able to identify which citation format that you use with four authors. That would be an et al. When you integrate citations into your writing, you want to introduce the quote or paraphrase. You want to provide context for the citation. You want to explain its relevance to your argument. You can say something like, Smith argues that, blah, 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 quote, page 23, which supports the idea that. Now, I would encourage you not to overuse the word that in your writing, but it is also something, because you're an emerging writer, that I'm not going to be super, super, super strict on, because this is your first major essay. That being said, putting it all together is the last slide that I have here. And that is just the goal for this week is to create an engaging introduction. It's to develop a clear and strong thesis statement to support your argument with evidence and proper citations, to maintain an academic tone by avoiding personal pronouns. And you need to remember that your introduction and thesis set the foundation for your entire essay. And I know I went through this kind of quickly, but there is a whole lot more information that I'm going to be presenting as well in this video. So I'm going to stop the share just really quickly and go into my other slideshow here and talk about planning and drafting the argument essay. And talk to you about this one. This one is actually not posted on Brightspace, but it is extremely important. So it's going to talk about formulating claims, mastering flow, and giving your sources credit where credit is due. That being said, it is critically important that this is your first major essay. Your focus is going to be on bridging the gap between research and your final draft. So ultimately, you'll have a working introduction, a refined thesis, and the foundation of your argument using proper MLA citations. So with that being said, just to go into the next little bit, to craft a strong thesis, like I said, I went over that a few minutes ago, but it needs to be specific, arguable, and meaningful. So your language cannot be vague. Your reader has to know exactly what aspect of the topic that you're addressing. A thesis is not a fact, as I said before. It is a claim that someone could reasonably disagree with, and it has to answer the question, so what? Why does your argument matter to the audience? You can't say something like, this matters because. So, you know, it can't be like completely obvious. We'll also be using ideas from Anne Lamott and Jeannie Harrop this week. And in your reading, you have what's a reading that I give to all my first year writing students. It's called Crappy First Drafts, and I'm using the politically correct word instead of what it actually is called. Anne Lamott reminds you that first drafts are supposed to be messy. That's normal. Harrop will give you the structure from your book, The Simple Math of Writing Well, so that your writing still makes sense. So this week, your goal is simple. You just need to start writing. It does not have to be perfect. You're also going to be focusing on clear and cohesive writing. And that's very, very important. Your ideas need to connect. Your sentences need to be smooth. Your grammar should not distract your reader. Of course, these are words of wisdom from both Anne Lamott and Jeannie Harrop. Anne Lamott reminds us that crappy first drafts are a necessity. Give yourself permission to be messy and imperfect to get your ideas out. What I tell students is just start writing. You never know. There's nothing you can't do that I can't fix. The second aspect is that Harrop provides the structural guardrails for us. She gives you the specific organizational patterns to ensure your logic remains clear to your reader. That being said, cohesion, I mentioned it a few minutes ago. Connection is key. Strong writing is not a series of isolated sentences. Your ideas have to be cohesive. They have to connect. They have to be like that train, meaning that they stick together logically. So you want to make sure that you are employing those transitions. You have a handout from a few weeks ago on transitions. Pull that handout from week 3 or 4 and look at it. Use words like furthermore, conversely, or consequently to show relationships. Refine your grammar so that it acts as a clear window to your ideas and not a distraction. I cannot stress to you enough, reading your work out loud will help you begin to see where your errors lie. Improving the flow, sentence combining. You've done a couple of grammar assignments with this. You have to be able to identify choppiness in your sentences. If it's a sentence fragment, it's not going to work. You want to look for short and repetitive sentences that share a common subject or theme and combine them. Add a conjunction, for, and, nor, but, yet, so, and, all of those. And they show logical link. They help link words and ideas together. That's why they're called conjunctions. You want to vary your structure. You don't want to have all of your sentences the same length. You want to mix compound sentences, complex sentences to create a engaging reading experience that has a little bit of rhythm to it. That being said, MLA citations, I've gone over this a little bit before, but you need to have parenthetical citations that are in text. Those are required whenever you use a quote, a paraphrase, or a unique idea from a source. For most sources, you're going to use the author's last name and page number. And you will place the citation at the end of the sentence before the period. The period goes at the end of the parenthetical citation. In this here, you will see that I have taken a screenshot of a proper parenthetical citation. In the discussion and the act of reading, Donald Hall states that it seems to me possible to name 4 kinds of reading, each with a characteristic manner and purpose. Page number is there, period is at the end. Because you've mentioned the author, all you have to do is put the page number in that. And so that is how a proper in-text citation will look. Drafting mindset is important because you need to make sure that you do not let the fear of a perfect first version stop you from writing. You need to focus on the logic of your argument now. We can polish the syntax and the revision and the writing itself in the next stage. But for now, you just need to start writing. Messy first drafts, crappy first drafts are absolutely okay. Everyone does it, including myself. So this is just kind of a summary of week 9. It is very important that you have an arguable specific thesis statement, strategies for sentence combining to improve flow, knowing the basics of MLA and parenthetical citations, and embrace the messy draft process to build a strong foundation. Start your draft. It won't hurt you to start it. It's not required as an assignment this week, but I recommend starting early. That way you can ask questions, you can send text messages, you can send emails, and I'll be happy to answer them. I really want you to understand that you need to ask yourself a series of questions when you begin to work on your essay. Is this actually an argument? Is your hook engaging, or is it just filler? Does your introduction lead naturally to the thesis? Because everything has to connect back to the thesis. And that's really important. Don't worry about perfection, just get started. So now I'm going to go back to Brightspace so that you can see everything you have due this week. And we will move into that. I just got to move my screen just a tiny little bit here. And then I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so going into week 9, I have here the essay that I went over. This is Crappy First Drafts. This is from Anne Lamott. I do encourage you to read that. You have a discussion on first drafts by Anne Lamott. It is imperative that you do participate in the discussions. Those are graded, and you do need to have 1 post initially and then 2 posts to your response. You will not see this as a student until after you have viewed everything in the module. So it is critically important that you view the content, absorb the content, take notes, and make sure that you are ready. Your prompt is to, after you read the Crappy First Drafts and Harrop's advice on engaging introductions, write a 1-paragraph reflection that answers the following questions. What part of Lamott's writing advice resonated with you and why? How can Harrop's strategy help you write a better introduction and thesis? And how does your view of writing a first draft compare to how you approach writing in the past? And you have to respond to at least 2 classmates in a minimum of 50 words. It does give me the word count for you when you do type in the discussion board. Please make sure you're not attaching a document, but rather typing in the discussion board itself. I can't mark for grammar errors. I can only put in comments with the discussion board, but there is a rubric that I have to use. And if you don't respond to at least 1 classmate, then the minimum grade, even if your post is perfect, you can get us a 50%. So please make sure that you respond to at least 2 of your classmates and you complete this assignment. Week 9's practice is grammar practice. It's citation and cohesion. You're going to combine sentences for clarity and practice integrating MLA parenthetical citations. And so you have 5 sentences here. And this is actually not that difficult. You will include the citations in proper MLA format, Harrop or Lamott as needed. I even gave you them as well. And you just need to combine them and fix them. Writing notebook entry 8. This is the one that I've gotten a couple of emails about. I just want to make sure that you understand it does not necessarily have to be in question format. It's basically what you're beginning to explore as a researchable question for your argument. It's not about finding a perfect question, but about noticing how curiosity and confusion and uncertainty can guide your thinking. So what aspect of your issue are you most curious about, and why does it matter to you or to society? Why do you already think you know about this issue, and why does it feel unclear or debatable or incomplete? What kind of causes and effects and perspectives or solutions might be worth investigating further? And you can draft 2 or 3. You don't necessarily just have to draft 1 because sometimes when you begin writing, more than one question emerges. And in the writing process, things tend to change and morph anyway. You can write informally and honestly. I'm not grading on perfect grammar here. It's a thinking space. It's not a final draft. It's just for me to be able to give you feedback on what direction to go in. And so it's okay if your questions feel messy or unfinished. The revision is part of the process. So that's what you'll be doing this week in your class. I don't know if you have any quizzes. If you do, I will have them open up for you at this point. But again, as you can tell, my voice is not the best and I am not feeling 100% this week. But if you need some assistance, please make sure you reach out, send an email, send a text, let me know who you are so that I can assist you. I do have office hours and I'll be happy to help. I do want to note that I do have my own personal class on Thursday evenings, not one that I teach, but one that I'm in for my doctoral program. So I do not answer text messages between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. In the evening, but you can always send me a text. I may not answer it right away, but I will get to you as soon as I possibly can. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. It is a very busy week with a lot of assignments. And please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions. On another note, if you are missing assignments, I'm going to be going back through the gradebook, and I'm going to reopen missing assignments for students that are missing assignments so that you guys can get caught up and get some of the missing assignments in for you. It's going to take me a little bit of time, so be looking for that by this weekend. Anyway, on that note, I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and please reach out if you have any questions. Good luck.